Good morning. I'm Sam Farr, and I'm not up for re-election. I can't believe it. This is a wow moment for me, wow week for this area. What a great day for veterans. We have been working for a long time to really establish the former Fort Ord as a veterans community, a veterans village. And it takes all kinds of components. It takes housing for veterans that are homeless. It takes educational institutions like the Monterey Peninsula Community College and Cal State Monterey Bay to further their education. It takes treatment centers. It takes clinics to take care of the veterans. And all of those things are built and are many of them dedicated this week. And I hope you will come on Friday for the dedication of the first ever DoD VA planned clinic for both active duty military, their spouses, children, and veterans. But today is about what happens when you elect people. Talk a lot about elections coming up, and I think what you see here is that elections have consequences. When you elect people that really listen to the people and get the job done despite all odds, and this was a difficult situation. When Leon was Congress member and the base closed and I was running for his seat, we were told that there's no way that a federal veterans cemetery could be built here because we already had one in Santa Anela and there was space available there, and the hard fast rules that within 70 miles of a crow flies you can't build another national veteran cemetery. We tried to bend those rules. We tried to make it, rather than a circle, an oblong. We said we can't take credit for the ocean and all those things. We couldn't get the VA to bend. They said, well, there's Plan B. You can go to the state of California, any states. They can build a cemetery, looks like, feels like, tastes like, is like exactly the national cemetery, only they maintain it, not the federal government. So Plan B was put into operation, but guess what? California said, we don't do this either. We take care of soldiers when they retire in soldiers' homes, and we have a lot of other vet programs, but we don't do cemeteries. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, you see what happens when you elect the right people and they get results. And today is accomplishment of that. You know, when I was looking into what the federal government, how they got into the cemetery business, and how we could sort of utilize history to consecrate this place. I mean, this has been a military base for a long time. In fact, California began here, and it began with a military regiment of Spanish soldiers. And we have the longest operating military base in the United States at the Presidio. So I looked into what it took, and you know, it's interesting. The federal government got involved with cemetery business after the Civil War. There were some 300,000 bodies, and nobody had an ability to collect, to identify, to bury these bodies. And Congress enacted in the 1860s, after the Civil War, appropriated money in the committee that I sit on, same subcommittee on Veterans Affairs, and with the military services to build cemeteries. Now, there's a fight in those days just like there is today. It was land use fights over, is this federal property, is this state property, is this county property, and the war had gone on among all those entities. Where are we going to build cemeteries for the southern soldiers versus the northern soldiers? They invented the ID tag, the dog tag at that time to identify bodies. And so Congress has been actively involved ever since the Civil War in trying to work out all of those jurisdictional issues. There have been 73 national cemeteries. Most of those cemeteries are around battlefields. There are the state maintains. The federal government still maintains 24 military cemeteries in 10 different foreign countries. One of the first to ever have a federal military cemetery was Mexico City after the Spanish-American War. Today there are 95 state cemeteries like this, state veteran cemeteries, in 47 states. But the local cemetery history doesn't really begin here. It begins with the Presidio in Monterey. And it was interesting to find out that when that cemetery opened in the Presidio, now called the DLI, it was a small cemetery, but it has an incredible military history. The first soldier that was buried in that cemetery was Private George Johnston. He died in 1904. He was a black cavalryman in the 9th U.S. Cavalry, known as the Buffalo Soldiers. He came here with the 9th Cavalry to refit and to rest after a prolonged combat in Cuba and in the Philippines. The cemetery is full of very famous soldiers that came to the Monterey Bay Area, including one remarkable one is that the Japanese prisoner of war died in a prison and was buried at the Presidio in 1945. It was closed after the Korean War because there was no more space available. So in essence, I think that's when the local veterans began thinking, what about continuing the opportunity to have burials here locally? So today we really began a new chapter in our long military history here on the peninsula. A place where I brag that California and this great state of California made all the first real estate transactions, the first banks, the first jails, first governments, everything. First constitution of the state, all began in Monterey. And ever since Fort Ord closed, the vision has been let's really keep the military presence here. And you know, I think we don't think about it, but that military presence has made this such a special place to live. Fort Ord was the first military base in the United States under President Truman that was integrated. We had a segregated army during World War II. The DLI hired host country nationals to come here from countries all over the world in the languages they were teaching, to teach their native language. They diversified us. And the Naval Postgraduate School was that. It was a school. It was a postgraduate school. It was a higher education, places you could get master's degrees and PhDs. The Navy educated us. And you think about the quality of life on this Monterey Peninsula if it hadn't been for the presence of the military and the military history here. I think we would be a locked-up, gated community, much like the Palm Springs area of California or Newport Harbor and stuff like that. So the military history here is part of our ethos, part of our culture, and part of what makes this such a special area to live in. And I think it's only fitting that we have a permanent sort of, you get born here in the hospitals, and when you pass away, you can get buried here. From cradle to the grave, we have all the services. And as we build this Veterans Village at the former Fort Ord, let us always remember that that those who have done service for us, that we're going to continue to serve them. So I want to thank you all, because the politics this wouldn't be, and I'm not talking about partisan politics, I'm talking about the involvement in the political system. It wouldn't have happened if you people didn't exercise that wonderful privilege, the only privilege you have as a citizen of the United States that non-citizens can't have, which is the power to vote. Your participation in the voting process elected the people who carried out your message, who when you organized and asked and petitioned your government, let's have a veteran cemetery here on the peninsula. We don't want to go to Santanella or other places. We want to continue the history of the wonderful military presence that's been here for all the services. So as I say goodbye to elections and elected office, I hope if there's anything else that I'd like to have you do, it's remember to vote this year. So thank you, and thank my colleagues. I mean, Bill Monning and Mark Stone were remarkable, because we couldn't have gotten this done without the state finally getting on board and appropriating the money. We have a program in the federal government. When the states ask, we respond. In phase one, we've responded with about $6 or $7 million. In phase two, when the state asks, we'll respond likely. But it's that ask that's so important. And I want to just say that I have several staff members, one of them who can't be here today, my chief of staff, Rochelle Dornay, and she is just dogged at when they phone rings over the Department of Veterans Affairs and Rochelle's on the other end, they jump. Debbie Merrill, who's here from my Washington office, is one that pushes Rochelle and myself to make sure that all the details are addressed. And Alec Arago, who follows the daily back and forth with the veterans here locally in my district office. But if it wasn't for Ralph Violas and Abel Jones and Jack Stewart and Jim Bogan and Jan Parks, those people were on the phone with me all the time through every detail, helped Jimmy Panetta and Jason Burnett raise the money, give them ideas about how to do that, we wouldn't be here today. So this is really a happening. And it's a happening because the people of our community got together, decided what they want, and wouldn't let go. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for beginning a new history the new chapter in military history in the Monterey Bay Area. God bless you all. Thank you very much.